Going back rather to the story there, of course, court ruling that Chris Hani's killer, Janusz Walus, be released on parole within the next 10 days. Let's get some reaction then on this Constitutional Court decision, and of course on Minister Ronald Lamola's decision to deny political assassin Janusz Walus parole in 2020. We're now joined by constitutional lawyer Richard Spoor. Thanks very much for joining us, and a very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Let's start by getting some reaction, also based on the fact that we just heard from the SACP leadership, of course, the party that the late Chris Hani was attached to, saying, you know, this is not a person who is remorseful. This is somebody who has, in fact, in the past said, I'd do it again. What is your reaction based on that?
Well, first, I'm very clear that he has shown remorse. The minister has acknowledged that remorse. In fact, a couple of ministers for him have confirmed. So the statement that he has remorse is simply wrong. This matter turns on one issue. The minister says that 20 months imprisonment is not sufficient considering the nature of the crime. There are no other to hold him back. And what was said is that that's simply not good enough. Crime, and if 9 years is what is, and not a good basis somebody corrupt.
Right.
And that to the extent that the trying to turn the way just win enough, that this constitutes violation of prisoners' rights.
All right. Before we had to go back to the Constitutional Court to get that reaction, you were talking about the fact that there was indeed remorse shown, and in fact, the Chief Justice alluded to that. But as we're listening to, those that were close to the victim, and indeed the wife of Chris Hani, who I understand stormed out after that judgment, it doesn't feel or seem as though there's a belief on their part that remorse was shown. Surely the victims' families should feel the sense that, yeah, this person is indeed showing some sort of remorse. They're saying, in fact, we didn't even get this apology that is being spoken about. So let's continue. You were talking about this remorse.
Yeah, it's agreed by the minister. There's not an argument before this court about whether Walus has shown remorse or not. It's common cause he did, and I think that appears clearly from the judgments and previous judgments in this matter. I think what's important to recognize is that this is not a political judgment. The minister himself says his decision was not inspired by any political consideration. The political pressure that might be brought to bear by the SACP or the Hani family or anybody else. This is a technical, rights-based decision. The minister acknowledges that the court is very clear about that. The question here is, has the minister complied with the law when he considered this application for parole? Yeah. This is the fourth occasion on which the minister's decision to refuse parole for Walus has been reversed by the court. On each occasion, the minister came back, and while the decision was referred back to him, he again made the decision. So, this is not unique. This is not the Constitutional Court kind of coming out of the blue and making a surprising decision. This thing has been long coming for a long while. And the problem is fundamentally that the way that the minister has exercised his discretion is unlawful. It's unrational. He has failed to follow the law, and he's failed to follow the law consistently for a long period of time. And the court must act upon that. The court cannot take into account popular opinion when it's making a decision about questions of law. So it's in fact a credit to the court that the court is willing to make a decision that undoubtedly will be politically very, very unpopular and is likely to give rise to strong feelings. But if the court were to subordinate its duty to apply the law to popular feelings, then we really don't have a democracy any longer.
Yeah.
Then we have a society that is ruled by the mob. and the strong feelings of some elements in that society. So this is a credit to our Constitution. It's a credit to the court. It shows a principled commitment to uphold the values that underlie our democracy.
Yeah. The Chief Justice said that Walus is entitled to the benefit of the law. And of course, as we know, everyone is equal before the law. But also we do know that, if you do the crime, you do the time. And one could argue that that is, justifiable application of the law. And in fact, that is the benefit he's getting from the law, that he is doing the time. What is your view on that? That has he indeed fulfilled the right amount of time, to be incarcerated?
Well, the judge cited cases that show that where you can, you ought to release people on parole. Walus has been eligible for parole for the last 15 years. We can also look at practical examples. People like Eugene de Kock, notorious mass apartheid murderers. The murderer who killed David Webster, and many other killers and many other people who committed terrible crimes, equally, at least as terrible as this one, have been released within a very reasonable short period of the minimum time prescribed by the law. So Walus is an outlier by a long way. He's gone 15 years after he was eligible for parole before he was considered. And frankly, if you look at the record of the decisions of 4 courts in the past, the decision not to grant parole earlier, doesn't rebound to the credit of the minister. And I want to stress, it's not just minister, but the ministers before him. 4 times the courts have ruled that the minister hasn't exercised his discretion properly. Our courts are insisting that we apply the values, we apply the laws that are prescribed by our democracy, and I'm afraid that hasn't happened. And all the populist outrage and anger about this decision, which is political anger and political outrage, it's really not a reason to override the law and the application of the Constitution dispassionately to the facts.
All right. Richard Spoor, thanks very much to you. That is constitutional lawyer and human rights lawyer Richard Spoor.